Hi guys, I've actually been into school and I have photocopied a couple of our little mini prints onto some cartridge paper. Notice I have opted for black. Now you could change colour, but I'm thinking black might work in my first little experiment. We're going to quickly look at the work of John Piper. We're going to look at his work much more later on, but at the moment there's a couple of things about this that might help us. Now, we're looking at these simple structures like sheds and beach huts, but John Piper often works with quite exciting buildings. Look at this. This is the Brighton Pavilion. And if you look at this dome here and the patterns and the surface, there's loads of nice qualities to it. I'm showing you that because I want to show you a piece of work that John Piper made in relation to this. Now, it's a little bit more subtle, but you see those visual characteristics we've seen when we observed the building. You see some little marked lines. If you've done one of these prints, you've considered line. We saw it with Lyndon Hayes' work as well when we looked at his work the other week. You can see these little lines and you can see how the artist has interpreted. Now, I'm going to see if I can lift this book a little bit higher for you so you can see some of the qualities and marks. Now, I'm going to suggest that the artist has painted that blue first. This is over the top of it. And this lighter mark again is over the top, so there's this layering going on and building up of surface. You can see it here too. You can see that those white marks, the paint has been dragged almost like a dry brush over the top of this blue. And if you look through the blue as well, I don't know if I zoom in would we be able to see this. Do you see this sort of scratches into the surface? There's also like a slightly lighter tone in there. And when we really look at the surface of this artist's work, we see lots of this going on. Now you might be thinking, you've just shown us the Brighton Pavilion and we're working with a simple shed. Do not worry about that. The principle of what we're trying to learn will work. Now on here, the photocopy, see, got the edge of the print plate into it. We can deal with these things later, but actually, if you're on the cartridge paper, you can get a rubber to begin with and you can largely remove that mark, so that helps a little bit. Now I want to draw a horizon. The horizon is the line that comes across the image that defines the land and the sky. I'm not drawing a mountain range or anything fancy, I'm just going to draw a line. I think a horizontal line. I don't want it at a weird angle, and clearly we don't want it to come in front of the building because it's behind. So I'm going to take a scrap of paper, you could use a ruler. I'm going to decide where I want it. You could have it quite low, you could have it halfway up, you could have it quite high. I'm going to say about a third of the way up. And I'm going to lightly draw my line in because I don't want this line to be dominant. It's sort of a bit in the distance. You see what I've done? I've done it on one. I'll do it on a second one. Decide where I want it. It's not perfect, that's not relevant, it'll just do the job at the moment. Obviously I can still rub that line out there that might be in my way. Now you might think these look like the oldest, most rubbish felt tips in school, well actually the ones that I might draw at home, but these are exactly the type of pens I want. I don't want the slick materials. I'm thinking like John Piper. I want to layer materials together. I'm going to take one of my pictures. I'm going to take my pens. I don't have a perfect set of colours. In the John Piper image, it was kind of like blues and creams. Now, I'm going to work with a kind of sunsetty vibe in the sky. I don't want to draw a big sun, a floaty moon, anything like that. I just want to focus on colour. Now, I'm going to layer yellow. I'm not going on the shed, I'm going around it. I'm drawing horizontal lines because it's in the background. See what I'm using here, my fingertip, to stop me drawing in front of the shed. It doesn't matter if it goes on a bit, don't worry too much. So I've got some yellow. Now, I've also found a big fat orange, which might think those marks are going to look a bit weird. If I just do floating around like this, it will look odd. So what I want to actually do is take some to the edge of the shed, so it looks like they're going behind it. And because I'm doing small ones, that should work okay. Now I'm having a lighter at the horizon because that's what occurs. I'm getting a bit darker as it goes up. So I've got some orange there. I do have a red. There's not so many reds at school. I'm going for more of a scribbly texture with the red. You might think that's a real mess. Do not worry. So we're experimenting. And we're going to experiment loads in this project with lots of different things. Oh, look, I've even found a fluorescent pinky. Let's give it that bit of that. You might think, God, that looks disgusting. But don't worry, we're now going to do the fun bit. I've got a small water pot. I like a little bit of water, not too much, in case it gets muddy or I knock it over. And I'm going to wet my horizon. I'm going to work over the top of it and blend the colours. I can add more water if it's drying out a little bit. Do you remember those John Pipery marks? Now this pen, because it's mixing together and I'm working to the edge of the shed, it's created these interesting marks that look different from the felt tip drawn marks. So remember, what we're trying to do is explore and learn about materials and what they can do. You can't write a poem unless you know about words and meaning. And so here we're exploring properties that will help us make better art in the future. It might be something goes entirely wrong and you think, ah, that's really cool, I'm going to use that later. You don't quite know. Now at the moment that is wet. And see how there's like pink coming off my brush? Now I might want to use that somewhere else. I might dab that over here, just these small little marks. I think I quite like those little dab marks. I might also wash it off. Now when it's wet, I'm not going to put anything else on there. That needs to dry down for a minute. You could blot it, but it might leave some marks on there, but I think that's fine. It does look quite cool and quite John Piper. Now I'm going to put a contrasting colour down here. What colour shall I use? I've got some greys. Going up to the edge of the shed. Now those lines that were around the print plate don't look as obvious. I have a bit of purple down here. Just a bit of contrast. Now don't worry about shadows or anything like that. Just go with the flow. If you go completely rainbow bright, it will look a little bit crazy. Now if it's wet and that area is wet, those colours might blend. But again, see what happens. It's not about me telling you what happens, it's about you discovering. So see what I'm doing here? I'm layering up. Gone over the line a little bit, but I don't think that matters. The ground would not be completely flat. Now this might be out of your comfort zone because you might like accuracy, but this is good for us. And even if you don't particularly like it, you're learning something. So you see we get some nice surface on there. And again, I could do with that drying down. Now, if we think of the shed at this angle, we have two different elevations in a plan view, albeit one's got a slope on the top of the plan view. It's got a roof line. So when I work onto the shed, I might stick with sort of plainish shed-like colours, but also think it's kind of light at the top. So I might stick with some yellows on the roof. Get my water, see how I'm just moving it around, it's looking okay. I might actually think I'm going to have some yellows in this side as well. If you've got like a beach hut or something that's face on, you won't have all these different faces to consider, but what you will have is dark and light areas if you look at your original photograph. I actually think I want something, what do I want down this side? Maybe a bit of that, maybe a bit of blue. That'll be a bit odd, won't it? But let's try it. See what I've done? I've layered it on the top and it's gone on some of the yellow and it looks a bit green. Think back to your colour wheel. You should know about this stuff, and if you can't remember it, you'll have to look it up. So I'm layering a bit of grey onto it. Now I'm thinking if it's lighter on the top, this side might be more in a bit of shadow. Obviously you've got your photograph in front of you, so you do have some reference material, but you never quite know how a picture's been lit. So I've done some shading on there. So if you've done one of these already, this is an extension of what we were doing before. I don't want the white of the paper coming through in any point. Now, if that's done, what we might do is let it completely dry and then work into it with other materials. So I've been digging around in the drawer and I found some pencil crayons. Now these are quite good ones because they're going to be reasonably soft. I'm going to just see it's dry enough on that roof. I'm going to explore just adding little bits of colour into the ridges on the roof. I'm not going random, I'm not scribbling all over the place. I'm looking at the sort of ridges and textures. Do you see how that's adding a teeny little bit more colour into there? Quite like that. I'm going to add some little bits on the side, and that liney texture might look a bit like the wood of the planks. See how I'm following the perspective lines that are on the side. You are making this stuff up, but you can refer to your picture that you've got on your reference material. That's why you must always keep your reference material. See what I'm doing? I'm adding raw textures in, but I'm working to the edge. I don't want it to just look like I've done half on the side. That's definitely added a bit more cool detail to this. I'm going to try a bit of blue on this darker side, which I quite like. It's a bit wet, that's why. Do you see how it didn't work on that panel there? It's still a bit wet. I haven't checked, haven't done the touch check test. Lines, 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 lines. A few more up there. I'm actually going to add a few of these as well. Quite like this colour. It's like a yellow ochre type colour. It's quite a cool colour in my mind. Now at the moment I'm doing nothing into the sky because I'm focusing on my little shed. Well, when I say mine, I've borrowed this from one of you. I've got a Posca. Posca is a paint pen. You can shake them, but you do not want to shake them without a lid on because they can splurt everywhere and it's paint, so it'll go all over you. So I'm now putting a few highlights in up here. I've gone over the edge actually up there and I think it looks quite nice. I've decided I'm going to have some of these little marks. I'm going to do these little marks into the sky. Now some of you might know Van Gogh's work. He does little marks. He does like swirly marks quite often in the sky, suggesting motion, suggesting wind. I'm just going for like little flat ones at the moment. And see when I'm layering them over the orange, so I'm beginning to see a bit of build up. Now all I want you to do is have a little experiment like this and a bit of play with materials. And when I see you again, we will explore the next options. Good luck, guys.